Welcome to the Two-Ton Nerds. As always, my name is Max James. It's day one of No Shave NERDvember, and as you can see, I kind of have a little bit of a head start, but not too much. And throughout the month of October, I'll be watching movies that make me geek out every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And first up on the list is one of my favorite DC animated movies that have came out in a long time, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. This is the deluxe edition, which includes both Part 1 and Part 2 as they were originally released. And they combined those two parts to make just a epic 2.5 hour Batman movie. And it's awesome. It follows Batman from out of retirement to fight the mutant army, Two-Face, Joker, Superman, and even the government. That's kind of how Superman kind of comes into play, and it's just awesome. It's 2.5 hours of just Batman being Batman, and this is an adaptation of Frank Miller's graphic novel, The Dark Knight Returns, and it's just awesome. And I'm going to kind of go through a little bit of it and follow. As I said, Batman comes out of retirement after 10 years, and Commissioner Gordon, he's on the way out after he's kind of being forced to retire in a way, but he's on the way out anyways. And so Batman kind of takes on some very formidable villains through his triumphant return as Batman, who has been kind of revered as a myth and legend at this point, because it's been 10 years since the last sighting of the Batman, and I think it had to do with Robin last time he was seen, and it was pretty. I'm not quite sure of the events leading up, but it was pretty traumatic for him to hang up the bat suit, anyways. So follows Batman. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, but follows Batman. He fights his mutant army, who they're very vicious and no holds barred. They're killing kids for ransom, and once they get the ransom, they kill the kids anyway. And they got this big guy who's the leader, and Batman takes him on in a junkyard and he barely makes it out alive with the help of the new Robin of this movie, Carrie Kelly. She's a girl Robin, and I actually prefer this Robin over Jason Todd and I can't think of his another. I'm drawing a blank on the other one. So I actually prefer this Robin. I know she becomes Catgirl. I think that's what she becomes. But anyways, she helps Batman in a moment of life or death, and it's just awesome. And through there, they form a partnership, and he's like, if you do this, you're fired. And it was like, oh. And so she breaks his rules anyways, and it's awesome. And then he fights Two-Face, who's going to blow up a bunch of people. But it's not your typical Two-Face that you recognize. He's not burnt. He's actually cosmetically, surgically repaired his burnt face, or acid scarred half of his face, and it's just awesome. And people will never look at him as Harvey Dent ever again, so he just goes back to Arkham Asylum. I do believe that's where he goes. And then he fights the Joker, and that's where this movie really starts getting into violent territory. It's when the Joker kind of steps up, because Joker's been gone for 10 years, and Joker has gone into this comatose state. And when people start mentioning Batman, that's when he starts to kind of slip out of his little comatose state and start to be the Joker again. And when Batman finally is back in full swing, Joker is back in full swing, and he kills tons of people. I mean, he kills the whole studio audience with his laughing gas, and he goes on somehow they make it to a fair, and he's just shooting people at random. And then finally the confrontation between Batman and Joker, and it's violent. I can't believe how violent this animated movie is. I mean, compared to Superman Doomsday and Doom and stuff like that, this is pretty high up on the violent scale because between the Joker and Batman confrontation, he just straight up stabs him like 3 or 4 times in the stomach, and it shows it, and there's blood everywhere. And Joker finally gets spoiler. Joker finally just gets killed by Batman. Just breaks his neck, and it's like, oh wow, and it's like, and you can hear his neck snap, and it's like, oh man, for a PG-13 this movie, this is pretty violent, and they got away with it because it's animated, and I'm kind of glad because animation is has that nice loophole of getting allowing more things to go on, and that's what I like about animation a lot, like especially with the DC universe, because there's a fine line between rated R and PG-13 storylines. So then, which leads to all this kind of going up and forcing the government to move their boy toy superhero Superman into play. It's like forces him to quit because years prior they kind of forced everyone into retirement except for Superman, who they use as a nuclear deterrent, and they kind of fight the Nazis, and I think this is during not Nazis but the Russians, and and they finally like, Superman, go kill Batman, and so they have this nice climactic battle at the end of the movie, and Batman just destroys Superman, and vice versa, but Batman ultimately wins due to a nice assist from Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, and what's her name, Robin, Carrie Kelly, and it's just a nice epic battle sequence between the Man of Steel and the Dark Knight, and it's just, you can't get any better than this. This is epic storytelling. The voice acting is great too. You got Peter Weller as Batman. You might recognize him as RoboCop. So it's just, so they went all up and above their voice acting and animation. I do have one problem with this entire movie, and it's probably the minute into the first of the movie. It's when he's racing an Indy car, and the animation just kind of threw me off a little bit, especially when it came to that kind of stuff, that animation style. It looked it just threw me off a little bit, but once they kind of went away from like fast, very, very fast moving backgrounds, that's where you'll never notice it again throughout the movie. So that was my only really complaint, was kind of a detailed animation kind of sequence, and I didn't really like it. It was very, at the very beginning of the movie where Bruce is racing his car, and just kind of didn't fit the movie a little bit. It kind of threw me off a little bit, but once I kind of like, all right, I'll just stick with it, and I did, and I'm glad I did. So I don't have a review scale this year, and last year I kind of did, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say I recommend this movie. It's 2.5 hours of Frank Miller Batman goodness. It's actually told really well. The voice acting is great. The visuals are great. The animation is great. Oh, everything is just great about this movie. It's probably one of the top tier animated movies, because DC is the king of the superhero animated movies. I tried watching a bunch of these Marvel animated movies, and I can't get into them. They're just not DC. Marvel may be the king of movies, like the theater movies, theatrically, but DC is the king of animated movies. You got even TV shows. You got the Justice League Unlimited, the Batman, the animated series. I mean, and Superman, the animated series, and they just can't hold a candle to Marvel. Marvel can't hold a candle to DC when it comes to animations, because DC is just it's like the Pixar of the superhero world. So in terms of animation, and that's really all I gotta say. I really enjoyed this movie. I watched it a few weeks ago when I first got it, and I'm about to watch it again. So I'm just going to leave you all with this little notion. My name is Max James, and I'm going to go geek out.